You're listening to The Final Frequency, Cold Frequency, the case of Elara Voss. We are 20 days in. Last week I told you I was going to the Calloway Industrial Estate. I told you I would do it carefully. Not at 2:47 in the morning. Not alone. With precautions that Elara, working a story she hadn't shared with anyone, may not have been able to take. I went on Tuesday, in daylight. And I want to begin tonight by telling you exactly what those precautions were. Because if you ever find yourself following a thread like this one, and some of you will, because some of you are journalists and researchers, and people who cannot leave a locked door alone, I want you to do it better than Elara was able to, and better than I almost did. 3 people knew my route and my timings. One of them had instructions to call this station's lawyer. Yes, this station has a lawyer now. That is a development of the last 2 weeks. If I missed a check-in by more than 30 minutes, I carried 2 phones, one visible, one not. I parked a kilometer away and approached on foot along a public right-of-way, because everything I did needed to be something I could defend in front of a magistrate. I took 140 photographs. I was on or near Render Road for 2 hours and 11 minutes, and I was watched for at least 40 of those minutes. I'll come to that. This is Cold Frequency. This is Render Road. And this is what 3 weeks of questions look like when you finally stand in front of the place that refuses to answer them. Render Road comes off the southern bypass at an angle that feels like an afterthought. There is no signage. There was signage once. You can see the posts, 2 of them, cut off at knee height with a clean horizontal slice of an angle grinder. Someone removed the signs for this road deliberately, and recently enough that the cut metal hasn't fully weathered. That was the first thing I photographed. The road itself runs for about 800 meters between scrub fields before it reaches the estate perimeter. It is, and I want you to hold this against the official record, in good condition. The official record says this site has been decommissioned for 2 years. Decommissioned sites grow weeds through their access roads. They accumulate fly tipping. Potholes go unfixed because there is no one to fix them for. Render Road is clean. Swept clean. There are fresh patch repairs in the asphalt. I photographed 3 of them. Of the kind you do when a road is carrying regular, heavy vehicle traffic and you cannot afford a surface failure. Dead roads don't get resurfaced. About 600 meters in, I found the camera. You'll remember the CCTV footage of Elara, the 43 seconds, time-stamped 2:47 in the morning, came from a camera on this road. I had studied the frame geometry for days, trying to locate the exact position. I found it. A pole-mounted unit on the eastern verge, positioned to cover the long straight approach. Here is what matters about that camera. It is new. The mounting bracket has no rust. The cabling is the current specification, and the unit itself is a model that has only been on the market for around 18 months. A decommissioned site, with no signage, and recent professional-grade surveillance covering its only approach road. I stood under that camera for a full minute, deliberately, looking up into it. If someone reviews that footage, and someone reviews that footage, I wanted them to know that I know. And I want to note something for the record, calmly, as a matter of evidence. The police told Elara's friend that the estate's CCTV recordings were unavailable. That camera is operational. There is an active status light. Cameras like that record to managed systems with retention policies. The footage of whatever happened to Elara Voss after she walked out of frame at 2:47 exists, or existed, on a system someone controls. Unavailable is not a technical state. It is a decision. I said that last week. I am saying it again from underneath the camera itself. The Calloway Industrial Estate is bounded by a steel palisade fence, roughly 2.5 meters, of a type you see around any industrial site in this country. Most of it is exactly as old and weathered as a 2-year closed site should be. Except the gate, and the western section. The main vehicle gate has been replaced, entirely. The original gate, you can see its hinge scars on the gate posts, was a manual swing gate. What is there now is an automated sliding gate with an intercom pillar, a keycard reader, and an under-vehicle inspection mirror mounted on a swing arm. An under-vehicle inspection mirror at a derelict warehouse complex. I have been to government buildings with less security on their gates. The western fence section, roughly 200 meters of it, is new palisade. Newer galvanization, brighter metal, different supplier markings on the panels. Something happened to the original fence along that stretch, or something behind that stretch needed better protection. From where the public footpath runs, you can see what stands behind the western fence. It is the building W told us about, the one with the high windows, the one where he saw the lights. I watched that building for 40 minutes from the footpath, which, I will say again for any lawyers listening, is a public right-of-way. The windows are covered now, from inside, every one of them, with what looks like blackout film, applied carefully, no gaps. You do not black out the windows of an empty building. You black out the windows of a building where light at night would be noticed. 2 more observations from the perimeter, quickly, because they matter. There are tire marks at the gate. Heavy vehicle, recent, turning in. The rubber transfer on the concrete apron was dark and unweathered, days old at most. And there is a smell, faint, intermittent, carried on the wind from the western side. I grew up near a rendering plant, and it is not that, but it lives in the same family. A process smell, chemical and organic at the same time. I could not identify it. I have not been able to stop thinking about it. Now I need to tell you about being watched. About 90 minutes into my visit, a vehicle came down Render Road, dark gray saloon. It slowed as it passed the lay-by where the footpath meets the road, continued to the gate, turned in the apron, without using the intercom, without the gate opening, and came back. It parked on the verge, facing me, about 150 meters away, and it sat there. Engine off, 1 occupant. Male, as far as I could tell at that distance. He did not get out. He did not use a phone that I could see. He sat, facing the footpath, for 40 minutes. I want to describe what I did, because I thought about it carefully at the time, and I stand by it. I photographed the vehicle, openly, including its registration plate. I noted the time. I continued doing exactly what I had been doing, slowly, visibly, lawfully. And when I finished my documentation of the western fence, I walked back along the footpath, past him, at a distance of perhaps 20 meters. He watched me the whole way. He made no attempt to hide that he was watching me, and that, I think, was the point. It was not surveillance. Surveillance hides. It was a message. We see you. I checked the registration through a contact the following morning. The plate is registered to a vehicle leasing company. The leasing company's client list is not public, but its largest contract, this is in their own promotional material, available to anyone, is with a government framework for, and I quote, secure fleet provision to authorized contractors. Authorized contractors. Like, for instance, a logistics company holding a Schedule 7 contract. I drove home by a route I had not planned in advance. I am not ashamed to tell you that. 3 weeks ago, I was a man who read documents on air. The documents have started reading back. While I was standing on Renda Road, F was doing something braver. I want to be careful here. F's safety matters more to me than this story, and I have her explicit permission for everything I am about to share, reviewed by her, word by word, before this broadcast. F went into the council's physical archive. Not the digital planning register, the paper archive. The deep storage where documents go when they are old enough that everyone assumes they have been digitized and no one checks. F's 9 years of service give her routine access. She signed in under her own name for a legitimate, unrelated file, and while she was there, she pulled the original paper folder for the Calloway site. The digital record for Calloway, the one that contains the misfiled change of use document, is incomplete. We knew that. The paper folder contains a document that was never digitized at all. It is a drainage and effluent compliance survey, dated 14 months ago, 12 months after the site was officially decommissioned. Sites that are closed do not commission effluent surveys. There is no effluent. The survey exists because something at that site produces wastewater in volumes large enough to require regulatory compliance, and someone, somewhere in the machinery of a contract designed to be invisible, followed procedure when they should have followed the spirit of the secret. Bureaucracies are like that. The lie is maintained at the top. The paperwork tells the truth at the bottom. The survey describes, in the flat language of environmental compliance, outflow volumes consistent with, quote, continuous industrial process operation. It references cooling demand. It references organic load in the waste stream. Continuous industrial process, cooling demand, organic load, at a site that has officially been a dead shell for 2 years. And there is a signature on the survey, a receiving signature, on behalf of the site operator, authorizing the assessor's access. The signature is illegible. They usually are. But under it, printed, is a company name. Not Verant Logistics Solutions, a second company. One we have not seen anywhere in this case before. I am not going to name it tonight, not because I am being coy, but because I have one chance to investigate it before it knows it has been seen, and naming it now would burn that chance. What I will tell you is this: the company is real. It is registered. Its filed activity classification is Medical and Laboratory Services. Medical and Laboratory Services. A blacked-out building, a process smell on the wind, cooling demand and organic load, and a medical services company signing for access at a site that does not officially operate. I told you last week that Elara found the thread and kept pulling. I believe we have just found the next knot. On Thursday, 2 days after Rinder Road, the detective called me again. The tone was different this time. I want to characterize it fairly, because fairness is the discipline that separates this broadcast from the noise. The first call, 2 weeks ago, was a warning shaped like advice. This call was quieter, almost careful. The detective asked whether I had visited the Calloway site. I said that I had walked a public footpath in the area, lawfully, and documented what was visible from it, lawfully. There was a pause, a long one. And then the detective said, "I'm going to tell you something, and you're not going to attribute it, and you're not going to ask me anything after I say it." I agreed. The detective said, "The footage you have, the 43 seconds, is not the only footage from that night, and the decision about the rest of it was not made by this investigation." And then, true to terms, the detective ended the call. I have sat with those 2 sentences for 4 days. Let me take them apart, slowly, the way they deserve. The footage I have is not the only footage from that night. There is more. More of Elara on Rinder Road. Possibly more of what happened after she walked out of frame. It exists. A police detective has effectively confirmed it exists. And the decision about it, the decision that turned existing footage into unavailable footage, was not made by the investigation. Which means it was made above the investigation, outside it, by someone with the authority to reach into an active missing persons case and remove evidence from the officers tasked with solving it. I want you to think about what that call cost the person who made it. Detectives do not ring journalists to tell them their own case has been interfered with. Not unless the interference has taken them somewhere they cannot live with. I have been hard on this investigation for 3 weeks. The appeal that omitted Rinder Road, the silence. I stand by all of it. But somewhere inside that building is at least one person who wanted me to know that the wall I keep hitting was not built by them. Detective, if you're listening, and I suspect you are, I heard you. Both sentences. And then, last night, the other phone rang. Unknown number, same as before. I have been waiting for it since the meeting with F, the quiet male voice, the one who told me Elara found what she was looking for. I had decided in advance exactly how I would handle a second call. I would say nothing. I would let him fill the silence. People who arrange calls like this do it because they want something said. Silence makes them say more of it. I answered and said nothing. 15 seconds of quiet. I could hear ambient sound. Indoors, large space, a faint hum. And then he said, "You stood under the camera." You stood under the camera. He knew. Of course he knew. I had wanted them to know. That was the entire point of the minute I spent looking up into the lens. But hearing it said back to me, in that flat, unhurried voice, did something to the temperature of the room I was standing in. I held the silence. He said, "You're more careful than she was. That's good. Careful people get to keep asking questions." And I broke my own rule, because some sentences cannot pass unanswered. I asked him, "Is she alive?" The pause that followed was the longest of the call, and I want to report his answer exactly, with no interpretation, because you deserve it raw, and I do not trust myself yet to interpret it. He said, "That's not the question. The question is what she is now part of." What she is now part of. And the line went dead. I stood in my kitchen for a long time after that call, and I will tell you the two thoughts I had, in the order I had them. The first was, that is the sentence of a man who wants me frightened, and frightening me is easier than whatever the truth requires of him. The second thought was about the effluent survey, the cooling demand, the organic load, the medical services company. I am not going to say the thing the second thought wanted me to say. Not yet. Not without more. But I am going to find out what is being processed behind those blacked-out windows. That is no longer a line of inquiry. That is a promise. 20 days. Here is the state of the case. Rinder Road has been stripped of its signage and resurfaced for heavy traffic. The estate has new gates, new fencing, new surveillance, blacked-out windows, and a smell on the wind that I cannot name. A gray car watched me for 40 minutes to make sure I knew it could. The site produces continuous industrial wastewater with organic load, signed for by a medical and laboratory services company that exists nowhere else in this story. A detective broke protocol to tell me the missing footage was taken above the investigation's head. And a voice on a phone told me the question is not whether Elara Voss is alive. The question is what she is now part of. I want to address something directly, because I owe you my reasoning and not just my findings. People have written to me this week, kind people, worried people, asking why I don't stop. The messages warning me off, the car, the calls. They ask whether a broadcast is worth it. Here is my answer. 3 weeks ago, Elara Voss was a case number on a desk, attached to an appeal that deliberately left out the one place she was last seen. The system that was supposed to look for her had been quietly instructed where not to look. If this broadcast stops, that instruction wins. The road stays unsigned, the windows stay black, and a 29-year-old journalist who spent her whole career making powerful things explain themselves becomes a file in a drawer with a word like unresolved on it. She would not have stopped for me. I know that the way you know things about people you worked night shifts with. She would have been louder. Next week, the medical company. Who owns it, who pays it, and what regulatory trail a laboratory leaves even when its windows are painted black. F is pulling one more file. The last one, we have agreed. The risk curve is getting too steep for more. And I will bring you whatever the registration databases give up. If you work in environmental compliance, in laboratory logistics, in waste contracting for government frameworks. You may have touched the edge of this without knowing what it was. Look at your paperwork. Look for the names you'll hear next week. The truth is in the paperwork. It always is. The lie is maintained at the top. The paperwork tells the truth at the bottom. F. Last file. Then you're done. You've already done more than your share. Detective. Both sentences. I heard you. And Elara. Wherever you are, whatever you are now part of, I'm still pulling the thread. This is cold frequency. The signal returns in 7 days. Point 6 is being fed. Her neighbor took her in. I checked. Small mercies. We hold on to them.